Aikwe, Neknamalita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian. And today we will be going over my June wrap-up. So June was the first month I did my Pokemon cards choose my TBR for the first time. If you haven't seen it, I'll leave the link above as well as down below. So June was my first for that. It was also my birthday month, so I turned 31, and then it was also just kind of a hectic month, I feel like. Ultimately, I read 12 books, so it's more than I thought. So let's get into the stats. I read 12 books for the month of June, which is awesome. But please note, don't compare yourselves to others. If you managed to read one book, fantastic. If you read 26, good for you. People read at their own pace and at their own leisure. I am happy to have reached 12, but I would be just as happy if I read one. Let's see, in terms of genres, I have 2 contemporary, 2 fantasy, 4 graphic novels, 1 horror, 2 mystery, and 1 sci-fi. I can't think of off the top of my head what's the sci-fi, but okay. For format, it's split pretty evenly, 6 audiobooks and 6 physical. And audience, we have 4 young adults and 8 adults. And then let's do the rating breakdown. I have 0 1 stars, 1 2 star, 1 2.5 star, 1 3 star, 2 3.5 stars, 2 4 stars, 3 4.5 stars, and 2 5 stars, giving the June the average rating of 3.83. I've been trying to figure out how to format this to best go over not only the prompts that I was able to fulfill, so bear with me as I figure it out, but basic as well as like what to do in terms of books that I ultimately didn't end up, or prompts that I didn't end up finishing, if there is going to be a punishment of sorts. Let's just get into the book. So I did have 1 DNF as well, which I don't count in my stats because I don't count it as read. I know others see it differently, but it's just what I do. So to kind of keep this in my mind organized a bit more, it's not going to be organized in terms of how, like, when and in what order I pulled the prompt, but in what order I read the books. So I'll just kind of go over that. So first book I read for the month was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Now this book actually works great for my tentacle prompt. So I pulled Tentacle, and it was it's a water Pokemon, so it's to read a book that is set on or near a body of water, or on water. And my original pick was Deep Light by Frances Harding. For whatever reason, despite the gorgeous cover, I wasn't able to get to this. So I kind of just put it aside and picked up Remarkably Bright Creatures instead. And maybe that was my mistake, because I ended up listening to this book and therefore kind of checked the box of a water type Pokemon being read, and therefore didn't feel a need to read Deep Light. I don't know. I do still hope to read it, but in the meantime, this one fulfills my tentacle prompt. In Remarkably Bright Creatures, we are following several different perspectives. The first is Tova, who is an elderly woman who is working as a cleaning lady for an aquarium in a small town in Washington, just off of the Puget Sound. Hence the body of water, as well as working in an aquarium. She is widowed, as well as has been figuring out her own grief after losing her son. So her son she lost like years and years ago, but it's something that she's still dealing with because other people don't know how to deal with it with her. They tend to avoid the topic completely, but she actually enjoys talking about him. It's to keep his memory alive. So we kind of get a bit of that. But as she's working at this aquarium as like the cleaning lady, I think it's during a night shift, she is befriending Marcellus, who is the resident Pacific giant Pacific octopus. We also get Marcellus's point of view, who, like I said, is a giant Pacific octopus that was rescued off of Puget Sound and is now residing in this aquarium. However, I don't think Marcellus would say that he was rescued so much as captured, and he's kind of ticking off the days as they go by until he can figure out how to escape this aquarium. Octopuses are very remarkable and brilliant creatures, and we get his perspective, which I absolutely love, as he's figuring out how to escape his holding, as well as finding snacks in the other tanks, and all the while befriending Tova and trying to make her happy, as well as figuring out some other things about her that she has yet to uncover. We are also following Cameron, who is a young man who is traveling from Central California up to Washington to try to find his father. Cameron, we learn, has had a troubled life and ultimately is wanting to find his father to mostly for financial benefit. We figure out how Cameron, Tova, and Marcellus's lives kind of intertwine and interact with each other, and I absolutely loved it. This one I think was available through my library, through Libby, and I enjoyed it. This was on one of my anticipated. I was interested in it. I don't know if I actually said it in a video thinking about it, but it was one that I was very much interested in until I saw the cover. I'm not a fan. Apologies if you are. Art is subjective and this isn't doing it for me. But I did listen to this and ultimately really enjoyed the content of the writing, and I just absolutely love books about or dealing with octopuses, so I wanted a physical copy. This next one actually doesn't fulfill any of my prompts, really. I guess technically it could be a trainer card for mood read, but it's the current, no. But that is The Woman in the Library by Sulari Gentile. This was a advanced listeners copy that was available to me through Libro, and I actually really enjoyed it. Not as much as I thought I would, but I still really enjoyed it nonetheless, to the point where I wanted a physical copy and therefore got one. In every person's story, there is someone to hide or something to hide. The ornate reading room at the Boston Public Library is quiet until the tranquility is shattered by a woman's terrified scream. Security guards take charge immediately, instructing everyone inside to stay put until the threat is identified and contained. While they wait for the all clear, four strangers who happen to be sitting at the same table pass the time in conversation, and friendships are struck. Each has his or her reasons for being in the reading room that morning. It just happens that one is a murderer. So this one was very meta in a sense, very intriguing. I love the complexity of it and the different levels. It was really fun. There was a couple of moments I felt like the ending kind of just ended abruptly though, without some of the not all the endings tied up nicely. I don't know if that maybe that's just something of the style of writing. It was something that I'm having a problem with though, but ultimately I did really enjoy this book. The next book I read was for this energy card. So for energy cards, the energy cards are basically, it's the type of Pokemons that there are. This one happens to be psychic, and for the prompts for these, it's to read a book with the same color on the cover as is on the card. So with this, it's psychic, it's purple, and I picked Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the graphic novel, because that purple, there's multiple purples on this cover that match perfectly. And so this is the graphic novel of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. This is a of many. So I read another Sabrina graphic novel series that was darker, very reminiscent of Sabrina the Netflix series, and I've also watched that one as well as the Nickelodeon Sabrina the Teenage Witch series. I've had pros and cons with all of them, and it's something that I'm trying to figure out if it's Sabrina as a character herself that I find I have issues with or what. But this one in particular, we are following Sabrina Spellman, who is balancing her double life, right? So she just moved into Greendale with her aunts and is like still learning how to be a witch. But she's also navigating high school, and it is imperative that she keep being a witch private, despite Greendale having a history with witches. But there are magical things happening, and Sabrina feels a need to crack the case of sorts of what's going on. For instance, in this one particular, there are creatures popping up in the woods next to the high school. When she goes to her aunts about it, her aunts believe that it does not have a magical entity to it, but they go investigate, wanting Sabrina to remain a teenager and a high schooler and like focus on her high school teachings. But Sabrina, being Sabrina, ends up discovering for herself what's going on. So yeah, ultimately I really enjoyed the art style in here. This one in particular, it's almost very reminiscent of like cottagecore type, in that, I don't know, I'm not sure why, but it's like it's like modern with like retro throwbacks, I guess. But yeah, I like the style of the art. I also like the diversity that's included in here. So like we have multiple characters of color. Best friend that we're starting to get to meet in here is not only a person of color, but possibly queer as well. So that was part of my problem, though, is that we didn't get that much. We got a lot of like Sabrina's drama, not much of everybody else's. It was mostly like, oh, Sabrina likes two boys, which one does she choose type of deal, or like just like her dealing with the mean girl. And yeah, I don't know, I wasn't as interested in that as I was like the magic system, the witchy stuff, as well as the possible friend that Sabrina's making outside of Harvey and the other boy that happens to be the mean girl's brother. So yeah, but it was interesting, and I'm hoping I would assume there's more to this, considering this is volume 1, but I'm interested to see where this goes. Next I had Zorua, which is a dark Pokemon, and for dark the prompt is horror. This one was a bit of a stretch because the book I fulfilled for it was more of a mystery thriller with horror and paranormal elements, and that is the Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This is a Book of the Month book that I got back in March. I've heard great things about Simone St. James's writing, but I feel like this book probably wasn't the best one to start with, mostly because I've heard even from Simone St. James's own fans that this one was kind of a miss even for them. But this one, there's dual timelines. We are following Shay Collins in 2017 as she is a receptionist by day, and at night she is constantly doing more articles for her website, the Book of Cold Cases, which is a true crime website. She's also dealing with having to navigate her own traumas, as she was kidnapped as a child and nearly killed, staying connected with her sister, who doesn't quite understand how she's coping with her traumas by navigating true crime. It seems a bit of, I don't know, it's a hard struggle for them. But Shay ends up running into Beth Green, who in this small town in Oregon is fairly notorious because she was acquitted of 2 cold case murders. And when Shay asks for an interview, Beth Green surprisingly says yes. She has been known not to talk to anyone really about anything, particularly after her acquittal. So it sounds like she wants to clear things up, and she wants Shay Collins to do it. And we also get the perspective of Beth Green from 1977, when these killings happened, and kind of what the events that happened before and afterwards. I didn't mind this. There were some elements that I really did enjoy. There were some true crime elements that I did enjoy as well. True crime is usually a hit or miss for me, just because there's elements to it that, yes, it's really important, but at the same time, there's some kind of exploitive element of like making the families go back through that trauma of what their daughters, what their family members had already gone through. So true crime fiction, I'm starting to get a little more into, just because it's not, I mean, I assume it's inspired by real life events, but ultimately we're not exploiting anyone's family. But it was interesting, and of course, like, there's paranormal elements, so it's like, it wasn't as great as I thought it would be, so I'm wondering if, like, Simone St. James was a little overhyped for me. I'm still interested in her other works, but this one in particular just didn't hit the mark. There were some creepy elements, the paranormal aspect, there was, like, paranormal is something I enjoy to a degree, but it's something that I feel like both my partner and I are very hesitant about, because it's something that we just don't know and we'd rather not mess with. So when there was the paranormal elements, horror aspects to this, it was fairly creepy, but there were also elements to it where I didn't understand why Shay Collins made the decisions that she did, like going back into that house. It was just very much like me yelling at the book, going, why are you doing this? But yeah, and then other aspects of it just kind of fell flat. I'm not sure if I really wanted or needed Beth Green's perspective from 1977. I feel like we could have got that in a better way. I don't know. It didn't do much for me. Like, I get the explanation, but at the same time, I feel like it took away. I was mostly interested in Shay Collins' perspective in 2017 as she was trying to figure out her own life and her own traumas, as well as interview Beth Green. So yeah, that's my take on it anyway. Okay, for Vigoroth, it was a normal type of Pokemon. Normal type is a contemporary breed, and for this originally I had put Delilah Green Doesn't Care. I forget who it's by, but I'll have the photo here. I don't have a physical copy of this, and even when I did originally put this as the book for this prompt, I had it loaned out from Interlibrary Loan. I did try reading it and ultimately just wasn't feeling it, so I sent it back. I don't know why. It wasn't connecting with me right away. I do still hope to read it at some point, because I've heard nothing but good things, particularly from Steph from Steph Company Bookish, as well as a couple other booktubers. So I am hoping to get back to it at some point, just not right now. So instead, I switched this out for The Other Mother by Rachel M. Harper. This was another book that was available as an advanced listener's copy through Libro FM. And it's a literary fiction, and we are following Jenry Castillo, who is a musical prodigy who grew up with a single mother in Miami. He is now at Brown University on a musical scholarship. His main purpose for being there is to find more information about his father. His father has died, and his mother doesn't know much about him, so Jenry feels the need to seek things out himself. His father was a student at Brown University, and they have multiple files on him within their library because he was the rather famous dancer. And when Jenry finds out that his estranged grandfather, Winston Patterson, is so his father's father, is actually emeritus faculty for Brown University and still holds office hours, Jenry goes to visit him, only to find out that Winston is confused why Jenry is looking for his son when he should be looking for his daughter. His daughter was the one that was in the relationship with Jenry's mother, the one that encouraged her to have baby, and ultimately helped Jenry for the first couple of years of his life. Jenry is shocked by this because he didn't know that his mother was LGBTQ, and ultimately really frustrated and mad about this because of how many secrets were kept from him. And with that, we get everyone's perspective. So we get his mother's perspective as she met, I forget the names and I'm sorry. So we get like Winston Winston Patterson's perspective, as well as his daughter's perspective, as well as Jenry's mother's perspective, and even Winston Patterson's son's perspective, as we figure out and navigate the intersectionalities that are happening here between folks that are LGBTQ, race. We intersect between sexuality, gender, race, as well as class, and kind of figure out why people made the decisions that they did, or what problems they were having that led them to the decisions that they made. And just the complexity of it. And the more I talk about this, though I didn't think I was going to get a physical copy of this, but the more I'm thinking about it, the more I kind of want one. And the cover's not helping. So it was really just, there was multiple moments where I teared up and ultimately felt for some of the decisions that were made. There are content warnings, so please beware of that going in, for mentions of cancer treatment, as well as alcohol abuse, relapse of alcohol, AIDS, death of a son, and grief and loss. So please be aware of that. It was ultimately really touching and really complex, and I love the complexity of it. So this may be one that I end up getting a physical copy of. Okay, for Pyro, this is no. I like. For Dino's a dinosaur, not a dinosaur, dragon. And for dragons, the prompt is to read a fantasy. I had originally had Daughter of the Moon Goddess for this, but this is a chunker. Despite how beautiful it is, I was not tempted to pick this up. Fantasy right now, for some reason, is very intimidating to me. I feel like, in general, fantasy is fairly intimidating just because I feel like I'm not going to be smart enough to understand what's going on. And home fantasies are even more intimidating. So I'm going to put this aside and have it for later. Don't know when, but I hope to get to it at some point. And instead, I ended up picking up Dead Collections by Isaac Fellman. Dead Collections is following Soul, who is a transgender man who works as an archivist in San Francisco and is also a vampire. Vampirism is commonplace here in this world because it is a cure essentially for life-threatening diseases and illnesses. But Soul isn't out as a vampire. Not that it's necessarily like a bad thing to be one. He just doesn't want to deal with it because he's already navigating some transphobia within his workplace. Elsie comes into his workplace and to donate essentially books that from her late wife. So her late wife was actually a semi-famous writer for a fairly popular TV show, and Elsie and Soul kind of hit it off when they realized that they were part of the same fandom growing up. And so they have a connection. Soul helps Elsie grieve for her late wife, as well as kind of navigating gender, really. Soul also starts to realize that he's falling in love with Elsie. Soul himself is figuring out vampirism. Despite having it for 5 years, it's come to a head when his office is no longer wanting. It's found out essentially that he's been squatting in his office, which is in the basement. So it's relatively nice and easy when it comes to traveling or anything. That way he doesn't have to go in the sun. But there is someone who has transphobia within his workplace that ends up outing him as squatting in his office place. And so his office is essentially like kicking him out, so wanting him to find a home. It's not, because the office is not the workplace is not a stable home and needs to, anyway. So this is very much like slice of life urban fantasy, which I really enjoy. That's one thing I'm finding I'm really liking, is when it is a book that is set in like real world but has like a fantastical element set to it. For instance, vampirism being a cure for the life-threatening illnesses. So this is just a really fun slice of life and exploration of like gender identity, and it was just nice. I liked it. This was I believe I mentioned this in my anticipated releases part 1 for this year. And it was one that I had wanted to get to sooner. And it's like, but and I had originally liked this cover originally, but the more I kept looking at it, the more I realized I didn't like it as much, and that kind of deterred me from picking this up. But the more I keep looking at it now, I feel like it fits. So I don't know how I feel. I feel conflicted. I also listened to this through Libro, which I highly recommend because I really did enjoy the narration. The narrator is Danny Martinek. Yep, Danny Martinek, who is a non-binary actor. So I thought it was really nice, and their voice is really soothing. So yeah. And also Isaac Fellman is a trans author, so it was like perfect for Pride Month, really. So for Mareep is an electric Pokemon, and for electric it is to read a quick read. And for this, I chose the Tea Dragon Society. This was actually a reread for me. I read this before and still love it just as much as I did the first time around. This is by Kay O'Neill. I know it says Katie, but their preferred name is Kay, and their preferred pronouns are they, them. So I'm just going based off my most recent knowledge of that. So the Tea Dragon Society is basically a graphic novel as we explore the Tea Dragon Society. In all honesty, we are following Greta, who is learning to become a blacksmith, a dying art within this world. And she stumbles upon a tea dragon after finding out that she should go to the Tea Dragon Society. So because they would know what to do with this tea dragon, she learns that tea dragon knowledge, or like how to take care of a tea husbandry. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Tea dragon husbandry is also a dying art, as not enough people are wanting to learn about tea dragon husbandry. So once she finds that out, she also feels like it's really important to learn that as well, so that she decides that she wants to learn that because it's something to worth learning and worth passing on, much like blacksmithing. We meet friends along the way, Minette, as well as a couple of others. I absolutely love this book. It's so cute, and basically tea dragons are small dragons, like small domesticated dragons that grow tea leaves and blossoms on their bodies, and they're a bit of a nuisance to take care of, or tedious, I guess. There's quite a lot of like that you have to do in order for them to be able to create teas, but that's where the Tea Dragon Society comes in, where people can exchange ideas and methods and learn how to take care of their own dragons, as well as their teas and the magical properties they're within. I absolutely enjoy the art style as well as the diversity in characters, because we get multiple creature races of people in here, but as well as there is a male-male romance, as well as disability rep. So I thought that was really nice. Still one of my favorite graphic novels. Let's see, the next book that I read was How to Be Eaten by Maria Adelman. This one also does not fulfill a prompt from my Pokemon cards, but this was also a new release from 2022, and it was really interesting actually. So this is like a horror slash fantasy fairy tale retelling type deal, where basically we are based in or set in New York City. Present day New York City. 5 women meet in a basement support group to process their traumas. Bernice grapples with the fallout of dating a psychopathic blue-bearded billionaire. Ruby, once devoured by a wolf, now wears him as a coat. Gretel questions her memory of being held captive in a house made of candy. Ashley, the winner of a Bachelor-esque dating show, wonders if she really got her promised fairy tale ending, and Raina's love story will shock them all. So this was ultimately very interesting. I only rated this 3 stars, however, because I found it hard to connect or like any of the characters. I thought it was really creative though, particularly when it came to Bernice and her being in a relationship with Bluebeard. It was fun kind of seeing the retellings come to life in a modern setting, but oh my god, like I'm not sure who Ashley necessarily was supposed to be, but I had a hard time with her and Ruby's perspectives or stories in particular, just because the writing style of both of them I did not like whatsoever. And I get that we were trying to go with modern, but when someone speaks in emojis, I have a hard time with that. Oh my god, smiley face. No, I can't. So I gave this 3 stars. I also feel like it could have been a little more rounded. I felt like the ending was fairly quick, and like I don't know, it was interesting, but I'm not sure how to feel about it. So 3 stars. Next, for this gorgeous Umbreon card, which is a full holo, which I don't have a specific thing for because I didn't know that that was a thing. Anyway, Umbreon is dark, so dark is horror, and for a holographic, it is to be an anticipated read or a newer release. And for that, I picked Cassandra Cause Nothing But Blackened Teeth. Now, this one I wanted to figure out where on the spectrum I lay, mostly because I've heard mixed things, but thinking about it now, I hear mostly disappointed things, which I can understand now. So this Nothing But Blackened Teeth follows a group of friends who end up going to Japan, particularly a haunted mansion within Japan, where it's haunted by a bride that was buried alive in wait for her husband, and every year since has had a woman buried in that same house in order to keep her company. These friends and have supposedly been like interconnected through their joy of exploring haunted places, and that's why they're celebrating this impending wedding here at this haunted place. I had a hard time believing they were friends, in all honesty. We immediately kind of get like not the trauma, but the tension between all of them. How the bride doesn't want our main character there. The main character seems to think that the 2 main men here are her best friends. But like throughout the book, it doesn't seem that way at all, that they even care. It was amusing in some ways because they were constantly calling out the stereotypical tropes that happened within horror movies, and then end up falling into those. But ultimately, it was just kind of really disappointing and really just kind of odd in that I didn't understand why the main character stayed when it felt like the others didn't care for her. I also just didn't... We only got a couple of images from the bride, or not images, but like introductory. We only saw the bride twice. And it was like a decent lead up and then just kind of pittered out. Because it's one of those, not to give too much away, but it felt like one of those horrors that was just like, oh, despite the paranormal ghostly elements to it, what's really horrible is humanity. And it was just kind of a cop-out, really, and I was really disappointed with that. So I think I gave this a 2, but I think it's going to be a 1.5. I really just didn't care for it. The next book I read also does not fulfill a Pokemon prompt, and that is This Is How You Lose Time War by Amal El-Matar, as well as Max Gladstone. So this one, I'm trying to think, oh, that's the science fiction, okay. I'm trying to think how to explain this. So basically, there is a war going on throughout all the timelines. There are 2 sides, and we are following Red and Blue, who are essentially time travelers going throughout time, essentially chasing each other down to alternate time in order for their factions to win. Whatever that means. They end up striking communication with each other, but not in the typical way, mostly because if they are caught, then they will be executed or whatever through their own factions. So they create these intricate ways of chatting with each other and go back and forth through it. So it's like written in the tree rings of a tree that has been growing for decades, or being having a bee spell out, like dance the letter out in front of you, and then having its sting be the postscript. It's just really intricate ways of communicating with each other, and because of as they're communicating, they realize that they are falling in love with each other. And after a while these letters become love letters, and it's really just, it was really fun. I really enjoyed this one. I definitely want as a physical copy, mostly because I will want to reread it, because some of the imagery in here is just so beautiful. I really enjoyed it. I don't know why I was avoiding this for the longest time. Maybe because it was sci-fi and because it has to do with timelines, it tends to intimidate me, much like most fantasy. Thought I wasn't gonna get it. So, but yeah, I did enjoy it. I rated this 4 stars. For Hop Hip is a grass Pokemon, and for that for grass type, it's to read a book that feels summery or is set in summer, and for that I chose the Tea Dragon Festival. This is the second one in the Tea Dragon Society graphic novel series. This one acts more of a prequel, though thinking about it, it doesn't make sense to read it before the first one. It's really the second one. But it's set pre Tea Dragon Society. So we are following Rin, who is, I believe, gender fluid or non-binary character who is ultimately trying to figure out what to do with their life. They're not quite sure what they want to do for the rest of their life, and when harvesting some or collecting some wild plants and herbs and stuff, they've come across a sleeping dragon, not a tea dragon, a dragon, and ends up waking him up. Apparently he had fallen asleep in hopes to wake up in time for the Tea Dragon Festival, only to find out that he was asleep for 80 years. Rin kind of takes this opportunity to introduce him to the village of how it is today, as well as figuring out how to make him feel at home now and kind of let him remember what he missed. So yeah, I thought it was really beautiful and really fun. I gave this 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star read for me, but it was still really lovely. It still has the lovely art and just enjoyable atmosphere. So we get a couple of cameos from the characters that we meet in the first one. And it just kind of helps explain some things as we move on to the third one. So I really enjoyed it. And then speaking of the third one, I've read the Tea Dragon Tapestry. This is the third and final book for the Tea Dragon Society series. And this one in particular, we are back to following Greta, who is still a blacksmith, is learning to be a blacksmith, but now she has a letter of interest to be an apprentice blacksmith person, so she's preparing for that, as well as taking care of her own tea dragon. We also get more of Minette's backstory. We get a little bit of that in the first book, but we explore more of it as she's grieving for who she used to be and what that means for her now. So, and we also get some of the characters that we also meet in the Tea Dragon Festival, so we get a reoccurrence from them. So this is also really beautiful. I loved it. I love the tie-in with everything. Again, more beautiful pieces of art. I just think it's so wholesome and cute, and I absolutely love it. So all that I read for June, but there are still 3 Pokemon cards that I have yet to talk about, so let's me go ahead and talk about them. So mostly the 2 fire Pokemon. So for the first one, we have Pyro, which is a fire Pokemon, and that's to read a book that everyone is talking about. I had originally picked Finley Donovan is Killing It by El Casamano. I wasn't able to get to this one. I don't know why. I just wasn't feeling picking it up. I do hope to pick it up at some point, but June was not the month for that. But I have heard good things, and I was told in my June TBR that the audiobook was a great way to go with it if I had wanted to. I just didn't. So, and then for Victini, which is a fire Pokemon, which is to read a book that everyone is talking about, but it's also a reverse holo, so it's to read a backlist title as well. So this, I picked a book that everyone was talking about like a year or more before, and for that I picked There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins. This one, we are following Makani Young, who has come to live with her grandmother for about she's been living in rural Nebraska for about a year, and her classmates are starting to die off one at a time. One by one, the students of her high school begin to die in a series of gruesome murders, each with increasing and grotesque flair. As the body count rises and the terror grows, will Makani survive the killer's twisted plan? I DNF this one. I started listening to it through my library through Libby and got halfway through and just found I didn't care anymore. So yeah, we get one murder almost right off the bat, and then halfway through we still didn't get a murder, and I just didn't care anymore because it was mostly Makani's drama, which, not to say it's not important, it sounded like it was, but it was like we weren't going anywhere. It was very meandering, it felt like, and I just wasn't feeling it, so I DNF'd it. I don't feel like this is a pause or a temporary DNF. I don't have time for this. So yeah, so there's that. And then for the treasure energy trainer cards are mood reads, and for this one in particular I had chose Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. So if you couldn't tell by my bookmark, I am currently reading this. I just didn't get it done in time for June, so hopefully I'll be able to tell you more about this in my July wrap up. So yeah, those were the books that I read for June. If you've read any of them, please let me know your thoughts down in the description down below, or the comments down below. I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, if you made it this far, let's see what, you know what, let's get something good. Let's do a smiley face. Like, I know there's not a black teeth smiley face, but let's just do a smiley face. We need the one with teeth showing. Yeah, if you made it this far, smiley face with teeth. Otherwise, yeah, I hope that you are in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Shoo.